This is Mark, verses, chapter 10, verses 35 to 45. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. "Teacher," they said, "we want you to do for us whatever we ask." "What do you want me to do for you?" he asked. They replied, "Let one of us sit at the right hand and the other sit at your left in your glory." "You don't know what you are asking," Jesus said. "Can you drink the cup I drink, or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with?" That's still me, so we can, they answered. Jesus said to them, "You will drink the cup I drink," and he baptized with the baptism, sorry, I can't see, Olson, I'm baptized with. But to sit at the right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have prepared. When the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all." All together now. "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give as a ransom for many." The good news of Christ. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Good morning. Whoa, that's interesting. I'm kind of tired today. I stayed up last night watching the elections. Wasn't that kind of interesting? I think everyone can kind of be happy. It's a kind of Canadian election, right? If you're an NDP, you didn't lose, maybe. If you're conservative, you did really well. And if you're green, you got the power. So our passage today we just read it, so I don't have to reiterate that. But last time I was here, I talked about love and how easy being a Christian is. Because there's only one question you have to ask yourself: is this loving? And if it's yes, you can do that. And if it's no, don't do that. And if you're not sure, it probably doesn't matter. Right? Like, probably doesn't matter whether you had peanut butter or ham. Are you being kind to someone, or are you being mean to someone? Is it loving? Is it kind? If you can answer yes. And we got to listen to the Beatles, so that was kind of cool. The difficulty is never in knowing what to maybe do, it's to do it. And the other thing is, often when we're being loving and kind, it doesn't work out very well. And that's kind of a puzzle that I've been thinking about a lot. And so let's just talk about some of the foundations now. So if you have a favorite hand, you can kind of put it like, this is everything that's God. Love, peace, beauty. And this is the kingdom of darkness. Everything that's not God. The forces that are against him and are opposed to him. And this is our world. Right? We were created in the middle of a war zone. Some theologians are saying now. The war in heaven that we hear about is happening when God's creating the earth. And that's why there's a serpent in the garden. Because there's this war going on. And we live under the dominion of the bad place. There's still shots of good in our world because God created a great world. He created us great, and he said this is all good, and then it went all up bad in the fall. And so this is the kind of world that we're living in now, that there's some good that's going on in us, but it's mostly overcome by the bad. In the Bible, those forces are called the principalities and powers, and we won't get too into that. But it's all the worst of us, our greeds, our lusts, our anger, our violence. Turn on the news, look around the world. It's there's a lot of horrible, horrible things going on. And probably chief amongst those is death. We live in a world of death. We love death and we hate it, but death rules. We all die. It wins. We kill. Like we either actually kill, we have to eat, we kill. And if we don't actually do the killing, we get people to go out and do it for us. And preferably if it's way far away somewhere where we can't see it so we don't realize how bloody we are. We like watching violence. We fantasize about being violent. Because, well, actually I haven't gone into that yet, but basically death had us and has us and we're in the middle of something. And just like there's the world, there's the good and then there's the bad and there's this intermingling, we are the same. There's these good things about us and there's these bad things about us. And so that's why I think it's Paul says, the good that I want to do, I don't do, and what I don't want to do, I do. And and we do know some of the glimmers of hope and the goodness because we were made that way and we can see reflections of it. And I'm talking, of course, before Jesus because now it's changed. But we could, even Jesus says, like, even the pagans know to love their own. What good is that? You need to love your enemy. That's a whole other shift. But but even then, I don't know. It's kind of funny because the people I love the most are usually the people that I've said the worst things to. And I'm in the meanest to. Oh, yeah, basically. And I hate it. I don't want to do that, But there's that power, like that counter force in me that goes, I gotta win this argument no matter what, or how I feel hurt, so I gotta strike back. I'm gonna show them. It's almost unthinking sometimes how we do these things because that's how enmeshed we are in it. My wife's given me permission to tell her this story, but basically, my wife is the sweetest person I know. She's pretty level-headed and doesn't really get angry. I mean, she's married to me, so she has patience and lots of things like that. But I think she's said the F word like 5 times in her life. And 3 of them are directed at me, a person who she loves. The other 2 are at Trump. So that gives you something that I get more bad words than Trump. So I wish I could read. One of the other ways we kill is we don't always kill like physically. We kill by shunning people, right? We put people away that we don't want to see, that we hate. Prisoners go to jail, we don't see them. People that we find just, a bit of a pain to deal with, we put in institutions or old folks' homes, or we put them away so we can ignore them and basically kill who they are. The other way we kill people is we objectify things and people, right? It's just a cleaner, that's just a whore, blah, blah, blah. We have all these labels that we can put on people so we don't have to deal with them as a human. We don't have to deal with them as sons and daughters of the Most High, all of them. And part of that's because we have to do short circuits in a way, like we can't just describe everything about everybody that we know ever. But it is a way for us to remain unengaged and do our cruelties without looking that cruel. I'm just not going to notice you. I'm not going to, you're just of this, which means you're not worthy of anything or consideration. Yeah. And we demonize. So not only are they an object, we can go even farther and say they are an evil thing They are whatever our evil is, right? My list might be different than your list. On the top of my list is probably guys that go slow in the left-hand lane. And it's like, would they just, yeah, they're my greatest enemy, which is kind of pathetic in another way. But, and then once we've demonized people, then it's no problem killing them because they're not even a human being, right? They're just an animal. They're not worthy of life. And sadly, lots of people that claim to know Jesus have done these kind of things throughout history. We've spent a lot of time here learning how to be decolonized. I mean, that is exactly what we did to the indigenous people here. They weren't people, they were just in the way. How convenient that we can just consider them objects, furniture in the room, that we can move wherever we want to move them. Or even worse, what all the horrible things we say about others that we don't quite get. Thankfully, Jesus doesn't demonize, he always humanizes. To Jesus, it's not the tax collector, it's Zacchaeus. Come, let's have lunch, let's figure out who we are. I mean, notice the engagements that Jesus has with people in the Bible. It's never like, okay, there's one that he kind of gets mad at, and that's the Pharisees. But it's about, and that's our call, is to be people that give people their faces and their humanity back, right? That's part of this new kingdom, is that everybody's a person and a face and a loved person by God. And so we have to reflect that same kind of thing backwards. And that's a huge shift, because everything on this side of us wants to have enemies. Yeah. There's a great song by Tool called Right in Two, and just talks about that. As soon as we were on the scene, we were wanting to divide things. The us and the them, the good, the bad, So this doesn't do that. So we live in a mess. As some of you know, my dad died a couple of weeks ago, and that he was old. He's 97, so it wasn't super surprised. But there's this kind of it's made me aware that everything kind of ends. But I've been watching the news too, and you turn on the TV and watch the news, and you go, "Oh my gosh, like this is a messed up place." And if I think really honestly about myself, I have to look at my heart and go, "Man, your heart's pretty messed up too." Like, what I spend most of my time thinking about isn't how to be loving and kind and furthering this new kingdom, but like, I wonder if I could ever afford that Porsche 7, huh? Yeah. Or what we're going to eat for dinner. I don't have time for this person, I'm hungry. We have, normal kind of stuff, right? But, and this week I was actually watching some news things and almost crying about how bad this is for a lot of people. We live in Vancouver, probably one of the best places to live in the world, right? Despite what we say about our governance and how terrible it is and it's the worst, but really it's not. Like, it really isn't. We're like one of the top 3 countries in the world for like wealth, safety, freedom. It's a pretty good place to live, pretty good time to live, we don't die from paper cuts. And yet there's a lot of misery we have in our lives in the best place. Imagine what it'd be like today waking up in Gaza. Right? You don't have to say, gee, I wonder who our enemies are. They're bombing the snot out of you, right? They've been killing your family. And then, Jesus says some crazy stuff that to us is like maybe not as crazy as it would be to them, like forgive your enemies. Like, what? So I think sometimes because we live in such a nice place and our lives are generally pretty good, when we realize how horrible the things are, it comes as a shock to us a bit. Like, it's like, what, really? It's not all, living in Vancouver. It's sometimes terrible. And for a lot of us, it's unbearable. And for And this is how, I mean, it says that even the nature's crying out how bad it is. And so God had a rescue plan. He has a rescue plan. And so he's going to invade this kingdom with his kingdom, right? And that kingdom started Christmas. Well, we call it the incarnation. Their plan, God's plan was like, let's go down, invade, and conquer death and all those forces by instituting an upside down kingdom, right? Starts with one person, Jesus, and he gets his people and they go out and they start spreading this new kingdom that is a completely upside down kingdom compared to any other kingdom going, right? And how does he change things? He comes in and he says, listen, love everybody, be kind to everybody. This is a new kingdom thing. It's not about grasping, it's about giving. It's not about fighting, it's about embracing. It's not about dividing, it's about gathering. And that's what he just does. And that's the kingdom of God. And it's like this now because we're doing this kingdom thing in the midst of not a lot of kingdom. And then if we believe that there'll be an afterlife with heaven, heaven's really just going to be where this gets separated from this, and this goes away. But we're in this process right now of bringing that on. It's infecting is maybe the bad word, but influencing the bad. And he says, this new kingdom makes no sense because it doesn't look very much like what we're used to kingdoms looking like. But hell cannot resist it. Let's face it, we live in a microcosm of hell. The world we live in right now has all the things that are hallmarks of hell dominating and fighting with us constantly. We're trying to be good and it's still fighting with us. And some people aren't trying to be good and just going with it. So this kingdom that he instituted at Christmas is going to win. Scott, we're going to get the cup. Woo! Unfortunately, it's not the Stanley Cup. It's the cup we're going to be referred to in our passage here. So anyway, so I'm going to show you a clip, but first has anyone read Good Omens or watched the TV show Good Omens? Oh yeah, you have, because it's one of my favorite. My wife and I read the book to each other, and it's so funny. We couldn't read it to each other because we'd read a passage, and then I couldn't breathe. I was laughing so hard, and she goes, what, and grabbed the book, and then we'd read it, and it was by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, and it's a TV series. It's brilliant. It's on Amazon. It's a little irreverent sometimes, and the guys that wrote it are not standing firmly in our tradition at all, right? But what's interesting to me is sometimes people that aren't steeped in Christianity can see something that we've never really seen, and it's shocking sometimes what they can see and kind of go, oh my gosh. I've sat in church for so many years and never thought of it that way. Anyway, the book's about an angel and a demon that are responsible for London. And over millennia, they sort of become friends. And there's a whole bunch of capers that happen. It's really funny. It's a satire. It's not the gospel, but it's funny. But every once in a while, he hits you with some profound stuff, and you're just kind of like, oh my gosh. So I found this scene particularly poignant. And just so you know, the guy in the white is the angel, and the guy with the long hair is David Tennant, is the demon. And this is the cup.
Father, please. You have to forgive them. They don't know what they are doing.
Come to smirk at the poor bugger, have you?
Smirk? Me?
Well, you're not put him on, though.
I'm not consulted on policy decisions, Crawley.
Oh, I've changed it.
Change what?
My name. Crawley is not really doing it for me. It's a bit too squirming at your fetish.
You were a snake. So what is it now? Mephistopheles? Asmodeus?
Crowley.
Did you, ever meet him?
Yes. Seemed a very bright young man. I showed him all the kingdoms of the world.
Why?
He's a carpenter from Galilee. His travel opportunities are limited.
What has got her hurt?
What was it he said that got everyone so upset?
Be kind to each other.
Oh, yeah. That'll do it.
Isn't a little unclear, but two things to note from the clip. I like how it starts off with them, forgive them, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. And then when the demon says, well, what is it he said that got these people all so angry that they're killing him? And the angel goes, all he said was be nice to each other. And immediately the demon goes, oh, that'll do it. I mean, that just hit me like a lightning bolt. Like, why? Like, I've often joked, like, who would crucify Jesus? He could turn water into wine. Like, who hates love? But it's pretty clear this kingdom of love gets resistance, right? That's the cup. You gotta, we're gonna get to that in a bit too. Okay, a little bit of a bunny trail. If you're like many of us, we grew up in church traditions that believed in substitutionary penal atonement, and it kind of goes like, I'm cartooning it, but it kind of goes like this. God the Father is an angry dad, and he wants to kill us, and he hates us. And Jesus, kind of in the middle of one of his rages, decides to step in the middle of it, and the Father beats him to death. And then feels a little bit bad and goes, well, since you died for them, okay, I'll tolerate them, right? And I'm not going to go into all the aspects of how atonement, there might need to be something, but that's just wrong. That's just completely and utterly wrong, and it makes God a monster, right? Because it says God loved us from the beginning, and he sent his son. He didn't say, and if you notice at the beginning of that scene, Jesus is getting killed, and he says, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. He doesn't say, Father, why are you doing this to me, right? And I think that shifts how we view our dad, and it shifts also attention away from like this act that, Jesus did an amazing thing. I'm not trying to downplay that, but it puts some of the, you'll see, it shifts things a lot about what we're supposed to be doing, right? But I think it's helpful to me that God's not an angry God that hates us. They were hatching a plan. They're in cahoots together. The Father and the Son weren't like at opposed or oppositional, or there wasn't conflict there. This was a plan that they had to bring this kingdom forward so that they could change everything and conquer death and conquer all the other principalities and powers, right? So part of how Jesus wins is he went all the way in. This wasn't his problem. He lived amongst us and didn't ever go over to this side ever. He didn't have the, well, let's punish, like, he didn't ever go into the way the world works to accomplish his kingdom. And when he was doing it, it got to the point where we humans killed him because we didn't like what he was saying to us. We didn't want to be saved. We sort of want to be saved, but we don't want to be saved. We kind of like love, but we want it on our terms, right? And so he had to take this cup and drink it. And in that way, that's how the hold of death and the hold of the evil were broken. Because he didn't win by taking on their strategies and their means to break this kingdom. They thought they broke him, and in turn, they were broken on him, right? So the power of death and the power of these forces are no longer rulers of this world, because he went right to the end and drank the cup right to the end. Okay, so now we're going to our passage here. James and John are walking with Jesus. They're having a great time. It's like, I don't know, hippies running around the Middle East, eating a lot, drinking a lot, hanging around with tax collectors, you know, doing the kingdom stuff, healing people, kicking demons out, basically doing Jesus-y stuff. And, you know, they're in on the ground floor in this whole new thing, this whole new kingdom. They are like some of the first people that went, aha, this is a new thing, let's do it. But they're walking along, and two of them go, James and John, sons of Zebedee. Aren't they also the sons of thunder? I think they are. Yeah, anyway, they basically saying to Jesus, like, hey, we have a favor to ask. And, you know, they also don't say it right away. You're going to give it to us, right? Kind of angling here, a little bit of something foreshadowed there. And he goes, well, what is it you want? And they go, well, you know, when you come into your new kingdom, like, we want to be on the right and the left of you. Not on the right and the left in this sense, but just important. Like, we want to be the, you know, at the head table, you know. Also, when the other disciples hear what they're asking, they are not happy, right? Like, how dare you? Like, who do you think you are? It's also bringing up some stuff. It's stirring up a little bit of, you know, we have to ask ourselves, which kingdom do you think they're talking from when they're asking these things? You know, are they talking from this kingdom, or are they talking from the old way, the world? We call it the world. The Bible often calls it, like, sets apart the kingdom from the world. But let's be clear here too, the world isn't people. Just so we're all clear. The world isn't like, and it's not like the landmarks and the trees and stuff. It refers to those powers and those principalities and the way things work in our world. You know, they got to get your hands dirty things. You got to crack some eggs to make an omelet thing. That kind of world. Well, the disciples are clearly operating from how the world works, right? They're not stupid. These are not dumb guys. And they realize, like, hey, when there's a new movement and power is overthrown, the new power comes in. This is human history too. We have revolutions in history. So what happens is these guys are on the top and these guys are here and they get mad about it and they have a war, and then these guys get thrown down and these guys go up, and they basically do structurally the same thing as the guy that they just liberated themselves from did. And then we just keep doing this pattern over and over again. So they're going, we're down here, and they are living in an occupied territory. Imagine, like, occupied Europe under the Nazis, and they're like, I don't know, the Poles. And then all of a sudden, like, and then they're gonna pay. So they're sort of like, they're aware this is how the power structures in the world work. The mighty get thrown down eventually, and then the people that rise up are now the new mighty. You know, it's like, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, like the Who said, right? So it's like this continual cycle. So we're starting this new kingdom, and God, he's gonna kill the Romans, and then, you know, all those guys that don't like us, We're going to rule. We're going to be the fat rats at the banquet, right? And so they're saying, hey, can we be number 1 and 2 in this power struggle? So, and then Jesus is kind of like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. And clearly this is not where it's going. And we're going to kind of skip around in the verse a bit. So we're going to get down to the bottom part now. So he goes, so if you want to be great in our new kingdom, you got to be low. If you want to be the greatest, you need to be the slave of all. And you can just probably imagine their heads just going, what? Like, how does that make any sense, right? Like, everywhere else, when you get to be great, people do this stuff for you, right? Not the opposite. And so they're kind of asking, it's not surprising to me as a human being. I'd probably be doing the same kind of thing, actually, too. Like, can I be in charge of the remote? Jesus. So I don't have to watch Jane Austen. Anyway, and so we have that in the and then he says, the Son of Man, just so you're clear, guys, I didn't come to rule it over all the other people. This is what the world does. The people at the top shove their weight around. The people at the top push and shove and lord it over them. And then the people over them lord it over them. It's not how it is in my kingdom. I've become the servant of all, right? So not only did you guys get the what we're doing wrong, you're not understanding what I'm doing, because I didn't come here to do that. I have every right to do that, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm coming to be with the least and the last and the lost, and I'm going to be low. And then he mentions, oh, so you want to be in on this kingdom thing, can you take the cup that I have to take and the baptism that I have to take? And that means, can you do the cost of what this is going to cost? Can you go to death and be ridiculed and all these things? Can you do that? And they're like, of course. They don't know what the cup means either, because they just immediately go, of course, because they're thinking, we're going to get the good seats. And he goes, okay, you are going to get the cup. Actually, we are all going to get the cup, probably. We are, but maybe not as extreme. But basically, there's this cost involved. So with that happy thought, have a nice week. No, I have much more worse things to tell you about. One of the puzzles I have is that whole, I could understand if what we were saying is like, overthrow the rich, like, let's kill these people and they get mad at us and want to kill us. But Jesus is talking about loving everybody. And it's not so much bringing these guys down, it's much as like we're bringing everybody up in this new kingdom. So why would that make people want to kill us, him? Like, why? That does it not puzzle? Like, I think that's what the thing in that video clip that really kind of twisted my head for a while. I was like, wait a second, why would anyone want to kill Jesus? He's a nice guy. Like, this kingdom doesn't sound all that bad, does it? Like, just sounds, why is this a threat? That's the other thing to look at it. Why would forgiving your enemies and being kind to people and not grasping and all that be a threat? So much so that his enemies plotted to kill him, and they killed him, right? And they killed his disciples, and they killed lots of people that are bringing this kingdom forward every day, right? There's Bruce Coburn had a song where he has a line like, you got to kick at the darkness till it bleeds daylight, right? I think U2 quoted it in another song, and it's always an intriguing picture. But the thing is, the darkness kicks back. When we kick at the darkness kicks back. And that wouldn't be too that's not something we don't understand in our world. We understand it. If you hit me, I hit you back. Like, well, generally people, if you hit someone, they'll hit you back. If you mess with us, we'll mess with you. And that's why we have feuds and bloodshed and warfare. And we understand it, that if this kingdom attacks this kingdom kicks back. We don't understand when this kingdom is being nice, why they'd kick back. We understand why the principalities and powers and people that are enthralled to it would not like the gospel, because it's antithetical to what all they are, right? But I don't understand why people would. So the first thing I thought about is, and you can think of your own ones too, like I was puzzling about this, and I thought, well, who loved Jesus and followed him first? Who finds the gospel the good news, not the bad news, right? And it's the least, the lost, and the last. And it still is the case that the people that are despised and shunned and thrown out and objectified and demonized find beauty in this new kingdom, right? Probably everyone here is here because there's something about Jesus that attracts them. And you read the gospel and you go, yes, oh yeah, I want that. That is so true. Because we recognize our brokenness and our weakness, right? But who would be threatened by that? The first, the full, those with power, those that are seen to be not know what's going on and not lost. So for them, the kingdom is a threat. Because in some ways, if you think about it, if I spend all of my life grasping to get ahead, killing my enemies metaphorically or literally, doing everything it takes to get here, and some dude comes along and tells me we're all going to be here, like, I'd be a little mad. Or clearly they were. Like, the people that have everything are not really happy if everyone else gets it. It's an interesting dynamic. That sometimes what we're for isn't so much what we're for, it's that we're for whatever we don't like. Let me rephrase that. Sometimes it's not that we like this thing, it's that they hate the things we hate, so we're going to like that. So basically the bottom line is the people that are going to lose something or think they're going to lose something or have done all these things to get ahead and all of a sudden are told this is not the way to go are like, what? Those guys are going to get the kingdom? No. My enemies deserve to be slaughtered. And then Jesus says crazy things like forgive your enemies. What? Like, my enemy is the guy in the left lane. Not really a big, but if I had people destroying my families for generations, and Jesus, like say people in Gaza, and Jesus says, hey, forgive them. I'd be like, not on your life. And not only that, he says, do good to them. It'd be like, now you've gone way too far. This kind of nonsense has to stop, right? So I think our fears flare up in the presence of the kingdom too. Our love for the kingdom is expanded sometimes, but also our fears get expanded, like, oh my gosh, how's this going to work? This isn't practical, blah, blah. Oh, well, it's not practical, let's be honest. But there's another group in there too, and that's often, have you ever been we've all been to school maybe, and you notice that there's some bullies sometimes, and then there's the people that get picked on. So you can understand when someone comes and says, I'm on the side of the picked on, how the bullies are not going to be happy. Right? But there's a whole bunch of people in the middle that don't do anything because they're just so happy these guys aren't picking on them. So they're quite content to let bullies pick on these guys. So Jesus coming along and says, oh my gosh, we might have a new target. We might now be the target. We're not quite, we're in the middle. And then Jesus coming in and being loving and kind also then, the second thing is it exposes our wickedness, right? So when he comes in and says, this power structure is crazy, this new kingdom is about these things and do these things, and he has lots of, that's everything, in the gospel, all the things he tells us to do, like to be kind to the poor and the widows and orphans and feed the hungry and forgive people when they do bad to you. Oh, and he also says too, right? Like when you do kindness when someone's really bad to you, and you do something kind, it's like heaping coals on their head, which the revenge part of me goes, yeah, mother, take it. But it's not that. It's heaping coals on your head means one of two things. You're going to be burning in shame or burning in anger. So the burning in anger we got, they're going to kill you. The burning in shame thing is the other factor is when your wickedness is exposed, often our gut reaction from here is to kill the messenger so that nobody can hear it, or so I don't have to deal with it, or whatever. You know, there's many times I've been having a discussion with my wife, and I realize I'm in the wrong, and my gut reaction usually isn't to go, oh my gosh, you're right. It's usually to like fight harder because I realize I'm in the wrong, but I don't like being in the wrong, so we need to end this. So, and often the response to the goodness of the kingdom is this, I don't like being wrong, right? So when we were talking about the bullies, the people standing here and that, also when this gets exposed, our obliviousness to evil and wrong and our inaction gets exposed too. So even if we're not the bully, the kingdom exposes that we've been complicit in it by tacitly agreeing with it, by not doing anything, by not speaking up, by not getting involved, by not changing the thing. So that also makes us mad because like, well, it's not my, like, how dare you? Like, it's not me, you should be picking on them, blah, blah, you know. They're the guilty ones, kill them. And he's like, we're not in here about killing people, we're in here about changing bad things. But anyway. So they're gonna be mad at us. Oh, the good news. Good news is we get the cup. Doesn't sound like good news that we're going to get. You saw what happens with the cup. He got crucified. Good news is we get to be crucified too. Now, there's a part of me that doesn't think that's very good news, and I can understand why. But there's some good in this thing too. And the good in this thing is that we get to save the world. This is not a faith that God did everything and we do nothing. We just sit back and go, let it roll, right? Because almost right from the beginning, he says, hey, I have this cup that I got to drink. And they're like, oh, yeah. And he's, oh, you got to do it too. You're part of this kingdom, so you're part of this kingdom. The mission of the kingdom is to overthrow the bad, to resist the bad. And you're part of it. And we're going to save the world. We're going to save creation. We get to be part of this whole thing that God's doing. And the cost is, yeah, we'll get some static. I mean, it's not, and I'm not saying that flippantly. Sometimes it's a lot of static. But the bottom line is, we get to be part of this whole God plan to save the world. And ultimately, like the book of Revelation, I usually never liked the book of Revelation because all the crazy stuff in it, you know. And I've been reading Stringfellow lately, and he's talking about the book of Revelation is about how to. It's not some like up there thing. It's about this is persecution, literally, and they preserved it by remaining faithful. It's remain faithful even though things get tough. Eventually, they won't. Eventually, we win. Eventually, evil breaks, and who and what we are in the middle of that is influential, right? The original Christians were all slaves. Not all slaves. There's some. They were generally the despised people in society. And the persecution that happened to them influenced people that were watching from the sidelines. The people that were once the persecutors all of a sudden went, wow, they must really have something going on that they do this. That they'd be kind to us after we do all these mean things, like, it blew their minds, and many of them became believers themselves. So the good news is we get to save the world. We are part of the rescue team that God sent out to save people. We're like the rescue swimmers that go in the storms to grab the people out of the thing. And that's dangerous work, but I can't think of better work. Right? The thing is, too, is that we're promised that we'll have joy in the midst of this stuff, too. right? Jesus didn't well, okay, there was a couple of moments where he's like, do I have to do it this way? But it was his joy to save us, right? And so we get joy. He gives us his spirit to comfort us. So it's not all just the bad news, like, guess what, guys, we're going to all get killed. So now what do we do when darkness kicks back? What do we do when we're given the cup? So the first thing I would say is we need to assess whether we're getting this pushback because we're doing kingdom things, or is it because I'm being a jerk? Because most of the time when people are angry at me and pushing back and being mean, it's because I did something idiotic, right? I honked at them, and then they finger me, and then I honk more, and I actually deserved it, right? And then sometimes when we think we're really right, we do horrible things and we get resistance, not so much necessarily because we were right, but because how we say it to people, and that we're being jerks in the way we say stuff. And if that's the case, we need to say, I'm sorry. That was really bad of me, and own it. And that way we might take a bad and turn it into a good, or aware of, like, I wasn't really operating in my kingdom mode. I was operating in my flesh mode and wanting to win, or I'm feeling bad about myself, so can I feel badder about other people who are sinners than me, right? It's that hierarchy thing, right? Part of the world system is hierarchy too, right? Like, here's the orders. These are the way we lord over things. And the second thing we need to be cautious of when we get resistance, if it's truly the darkness kicking back, is to make sure that we don't switch back into the dark, right? So we're doing these good things and we get punished for it. Do we then go, that's it, gloves are off, I'm going to punch the guy in the face? Or am I going to fight back? Or am I going to use violence, right? You can never use a gun in the kingdom. Now, I'm not going to talk about whether there's places where you might have to use a gun, but the kingdom never goes forward with guns, right? Or violence. So will I switch into that thing? And it's okay to be, when things happen to you that are bad, it's okay to be sad and it's okay to be angry. It's like we're not supposed to do things that we would normally in our flesh do to counter it, right? So we need to assess at that point, guard ourselves that we don't back into our old way of thinking, our old way of doing. And an interesting thing is that Jesus won by going all the way through without ever embracing the means and the methods of the worldly kingdom, right? That's what the devil tempted him with. Crowley kind of mentions that, like, oh, I showed him the world. But it's like, he showed him, like, you could have power and rule all these people, like power. You could have wealth and buy all these people. And you could be super popular and spectacle and dazzle them. And he said, no, right? I'm not going to take on those things. I'm going to win using the values of the kingdom, which is by being the servant of all and loving all. And it looks like losing all the time. It looks like losing all the time. Jesus on the cross doesn't look like a winner, right? It was the most despicable way to die. It was shameful. People that, but it won. I remember one time when I was righteous, to brag, I was at work. I worked for the Corrections Canada, and we were supposed to monitor guys that they came back at their curfew time. But before I went on shift, this guy absconded. So the earlier crew wrote it down in our logbook, like this is what happened. And then we did our shift, and then the next shift came on, and you're supposed to read the log to know what has happened. And we kind of told the people, read the log. But my boss wasn't told directly, and he was furious. And he said, you're all going to get reprimand letters for not telling me. He says, why did you hide this from me? And I was like, I didn't do that. I wasn't even on shift yet. How dare you? Blah, blah, blah. I'm going to fight this. And I felt God saying, don't do this. And it felt like everything in me wants to win and be right. And it was the hardest thing to go to my boss and say, okay, I'll sign the letter. I just want you to know I didn't lie to you. I hope you know that I would never lie to you. And he goes, oh yeah, I know you wouldn't lie, but everyone gets the punishment. Or no one does. So it's like, okay, I'll sign that. I got the letter of discipline. Felt horrible in one way. It felt good in one way because I resisted fighting and demanding my union come in and kick his, there was lots of things I could have done because it wasn't right. The end result was that by the end of my time at that job, I was an honored person in that guy's eye because he says, you're the only guy that didn't fight back. You're the only guy that didn't make excuses. You just said, okay, we won't do, so I'm not bragging too much, but I am kind of bragging. I'm bragging because I didn't want to do it, but I felt so compelled by the Spirit that I did that. And it still felt in the middle of it, and even for the couple of days afterwards, like, this is stupid. But the end result was it wasn't. And I think that's how the kingdom of God works. It looks like we're losing because from the outside, it looks like losing. And then, surprise, we killed death. The third thing to think about in this is we're giving another way to survive unfairness is we're giving each other to embrace and hold up and encourage and spur onward. Like, yes, keep going. It's tough, keep going. You're right, that's wrong. We got it. And if there's really severe consequences, we step in and fill the gap. In the early church, if someone lost their life, they all surrounded the family and took care of it. It was not like, well, I'd rather have a bigger TV this year, not help you. It was like, we're going to do that. And that's what's so weird about the kingdom of God is how counterintuitive it is to getting ahead as a body, right? We help each other. We're here for each other. The very fact that there's people that have gone through the same things that can walk beside you is a huge, huge, huge blessing. I used to think you could be a Christian without church because I didn't really like the songs and, the books they read. And yeah, the music was really a big thing. And, the formalities and some of the weird things, and I'm a bit of a heretic, I admit it. But I can just do Jesus with me and him and a cup of coffee at Starbucks. But I realized, no, I can't, because the call to do this kingdom thing can't be done by one person, right? I can't save the world by myself. I definitely need Jesus, and I need the power of his Spirit, and I need you. We need us to do this thing and to make it through, right? And he's given us that, so I think that's an amazing thing. There's some people that suffer alone, that are being persecuted in jail by themselves. They don't physically have anyone else there. Clearly there's people praying and stuff, and that's part of it too. Right? And then, of course, the most important thing is we have our founder with us. We're not doing this alone. Jesus does it with us. He's there with us in it. He gives us joy in the midst of our troubles. He gives us his Spirit so that we can do it when we can't do it. Like when we're like, I can't do this. I can't. And it's like, yes, you can. So that's all I have to say about that part of it. It just really struck me that this whole thing of why it would be bad news to some people and why I'm always kind of weirded about that. But anyway, be encouraged. We're going to get the cup. But we get to save the world. And I think that's an amazing thing that God trusts us so much to say, my kingdom's in your hand, go do it. Like, do this stuff. What a challenge. There's so much work to do. Not that it's based on works, but it's basically as we're going about doing it and we're getting resistance by being loving and looking like idiots for being loving, we're actually winning. And so that's where I wanted to leave that. I don't know how long I talked for, but was it long enough? So I wasn't at my best today. It was a kind of bad week, so it's probably all over the place there, but that's how my crazy brain works. It's just kind of like, halfway through this sermon, I started thinking about other things about it and going, wait a second, stay on target. So thank you for putting up with me. That was probably your cup, having to put up with listening to me, but.